I am going to teach you how to make these cute felted wool gnomes. You're going to be using wet felting, needle felting, just sewing for their basic body shapes. You're going to create yourself an adorable gnome. Okay. The supplies you're going to need are feltable wool roving, which you can find at yarn shops, spinning shops, Etsy. This is about 1/2 ounce of green Corriedale wool. We're going to make a green hat today. You're going to want some flesh toned wool to make the nose. You can also use a wooden bead. You could probably take a piece of knit fabric in a flesh tone and cut out a circle, stuff it, gather around the edge, and make a little round nose if you don't have access to flesh color feltable wool. Really important, merino wool will not work. It doesn't felt, doesn't wet felt. It does needle felt a little bit, but it's a really soft wool that doesn't swell up. The fibers don't swell up with scales to tangle themselves when you're wet felting. So anyways, you're going to want a feltable wool. Then you're going to want wool for his beard. You could choose a brown like I have here. This is 1 ounce of wool, far more than we'll need. Just so you know what 1 ounce of wool looks like when you're ordering online, far more than we need. 1 ounce of wool will make lots of stuff. Anyhow, you're going to want some wool for his beard. Maybe you want to have a brown beard or a white beard. This is wool from my sheep Layla, so it's not combed and carded and made into a nice ball instead of just a wad, and it still has little bits of grass and stuff like that. So you're going to need those things. You're also going to need a piece of fabric for the body. It's going to need to be about 5 inches wide by 15 inches long. I am using the sleeve of an old suit jacket that I found at the thrift store for $1. And I'm going to get lots and lots of projects out of this amazing houndstooth. So glad I rescued it from the thrift store because it's going to make awfully cute gnomes. In addition to that, you're going to need some sort of batting. I personally use cotton batting. I use it in upholstery. I have a lot of little pieces laying around, so I don't throw them away. I save them for my home projects. And then, as well, you will need bubble wrap. Bubble wrap is for the felting process. So you get yourself a nice big piece of bubble wrap, and then also you're going to need to cut out a little piece that's a triangle that's going to end up being a little bit bigger than their final hat. See here? A little bit bigger than the final hat, because when you're felting you'll be able to shrink it down, but this is going to keep it open on the inside while you're felting. So you're going to want to cut a little hat out that's a little triangle shape that's a little bit bigger than the final shape of the final hat. This one is about 6 inches long and 4.5, 5 inches wide on the bottom. So you're also going to need rice. This is going to be the base that holds them upright and gives them weight and heft so it doesn't just fall all over. You can use beans, rice, anything like that. Whatever you have in your cupboards. Don't get too picky. All right, I'll be right back and we'll start making a hat. The first thing you're going to learn is how to make a hat. So you're going to take your wool, and when you're pulling on wool, you can't get it undone when you yank it really hard like that. You need to just take a little bit at a time, and it just comes out nice and neat. And it's the fibers, you'll see the fibers are nice and long, and that's really important when felting. We're going to want to lay our fibers, little pieces of fibers, all the same direction. We're going to make, and we want it to be even, so this is a little bit thick right there. Thin that out. Just do this. All of your fibers right now are going that direction. This is very important. You're going to make this way bigger than your triangle hat, and we are going to make it into somewhat of a triangular shape. I'm going to make it about 1 inch and then twice as wide. You'll see. It's important. This whole thing is going to shrink down by about 20 to 30%. So overlapping your fibers Oops, my little arrow got stuck. Overlap your fibers. Keep it rather even. This is a rustic gnome, so those uneven spots will just be thicker, more lumpier spots in his hat anyways, so that isn't actually too big a deal. It'll probably add some sort of cute character. And now I'm angling it kind of like this way, because I'm trying to make a big triangle with all my fibers basically laid the same direction. You want to overlap, 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 just a little bit. Thin pieces, not too thick, because you have to have them go this way, and then the next layer will go this way. If they're too thick, there's too many layers and they won't felt nice, but this way they start to get tangled into each other while you're felting. Now over here on the edges, on this edge and this edge, I'm going to be making those edges just a little bit thinner because eventually we're going to roll them over. And we don't want it twice as thick as this part. Okay, now once you've laid all your fibers going this way, then start laying them going this way. We're going to do about 4 layers here. And you want to get that point up there because that's going to be the top of your hat. Super adorable. You know, you can fan this out, lay it on there. When I say 4 layers, I mean 4 layers, one going this way, one going this way, this way, this way. Until you really can't see the bubble wrap underneath. Because if you can see it, it'll probably be a hole later in your fabric, or a very thin spot where you're going to see the stuffing that you're going to put in his hat later. And you don't have to worry about the bottom being perfect. If it has fluffies hanging off, we're going to be folding that up and under to make a brim. In fact, you probably do want a little bit of fluffies hanging off the end. It won't hurt a thing. I don't know if you can see how thin these pieces are. They're pretty thin. And just remember, you can't yank this stuff too much. You just got to grab barely any. I hope you can see this. Just grab barely any. Please hold. Phone call. Okay, I have my hot water here. I would usually do this by the sink, but since we are, for the intent of this video, I'm just going to do it right here. I'm just going to pour a little bit of water. You want to get some water and soap on this thing. And then fold your bubble wrap over and just really gently start to wiggle it, getting it wet and soapy. You're going to want to get it that way everywhere. Wiggle, wiggle. You're going to do this gently at first, just a little bit, and then turn it over. Get some water over here. The soap will start to travel throughout the whole thing just because I put quite a bit of soap on it actually. Wiggle. Wiggle. You don't want to do this too much because we don't want it to completely felt yet. We want to be able to open it up, get that flat crease out that's happening on both sides right now. Just want to start the felting process. And right up here, maybe just do that. All right. Now, remove this one. Pull out put your hand in there, get it opened up. See that crease? We don't want that. We don't want to get rid of that crease on both sides. So, it's not that hard. Just kind of open it up, wiggle it down, make sure both sides is down. Adjust your little plastic scrap on the inside, your plastic triangle, to fill up the interior so that we don't lose that space, so it doesn't felt together and become just a triangle. Again, I'm going to stick a piece of this in here. It's looking really good. Really good. Now, just fold it, roll it, and just start rolling it. Roll it, roll it, roll it. As you can see, the hat is starting to shrink and get felted. Beautiful. Now turn it the opposite direction. Roll it this way. It's a very clean craft. You're going to have the most soft and beautiful hands when you're done. Maybe a little dry. I need some lotion added to that supply list. And roll it. There's your hat. It's coming along. And you're thinking, how is that going to turn into that? How on earth are these two things ever going to work out? Well, just watch. So, now that you got your hat doing pretty good and it's felted and you can open it up, just take it in your hand and start rolling it. You can add hot water to it. Get rid of some of that soap and just roll, roll, roll. Roll, roll, roll. I'm just squishing it, rolling it, maneuvering it, getting it hot water on it and letting some of that soap out. It kind of helps open up the scales on the fur, which are how it felts. The scales open up, and then as they tangle, these all have scales, they tangle, and then they can't pull back out. So they just keep getting tighter and tighter and tighter until it's very felted and very small. Vigorously. I'm squishing it hard now. I'm really vigorously felting it. And the reason why I don't have a pattern for their body is because we don't know how big their hat is going to be, and the whole body depends on the width of the hat, how big his little head's going to be. All right, let's see what we got going on here. So untangle this little hat. Ooh, I like it. I like to leave that little point all funky. And I like this little wrinkle. That's kind of cute. There we go. We're getting there. Now you can see. Ooh, can you see? There you go. Now you can see we're getting there. It's getting closer. In fact, I could pretty much be done, but I think I'm going to make it just a little bit skinnier and shorter. And if you want to just make it skinnier and not mess with the point, you can just roll the bottom half and just really work the bottom half to make the bottom skinnier and smaller. And then make sure you get all the soap and water out. I'm going to take this to the sink. That's going to be super cute. Rinse all your soap and water out. Go. Now you can just kind of form your hat however you want it to be, and then let it dry. And later we'll form it more. We'll be pulling it, pushing it, adjusting it when we stick it on our little body. There you go. You have a little gnome hat. Just let that dry right there. Okay, we're going to make a nose. We're going to use a flesh color Corridel wool that's usually used for spinning or whatever. I like to use it for this. I don't spin anything. I've spinned about that much yarn in my whole life. So you just take a nice thin piece. You can just tease it out so it's long. You're going to need more than this, most likely. And just start like you're rolling a ball of yarn. You want it to be thin though, because you're going to be trying to tangle these up just like the hat. So you're going to want to switch directions, roll it as tight as possible. You're going to want to make it about 20 to 30% bigger than your final nose. Try not to let weird folds happen. Try and tease those over, and I hope you can see what I'm doing here. You want it to be pretty smooth looking, because if you felt it and it's got a big chunk like this, it'll be a flap, and that's going to look very strange. You may just have to throw it away. Anyways, this is how you make felt balls. You could make different colored ones and make a garland. if you felt like it. Don't do that too much. It'll fall apart. You just want to do a little bit to keep it together. Tease out some wool here. Hope you guys can see this. Okay, that's about good. So that's this size. I'm going to show you one that's finished. I'll pause. Okay, this one's not a very good one. See, this is the flaps and stuff, so this one I'm probably never going to use, but I'm using it as an example now of how big this will shrink, how much this will shrink. So once I've put soap and water and rolled it around and smushed it and all that good stuff, it'll shrink down to about this size. And then it'll be a perfect little nose. I'm not going to use this one because it's got, I don't know what I did. But there you go, an example of how much it shrinks. So I just put my Dawn dish soap in a foaming soap dispenser. And I have a little bit of hot water in a cup over here, which I have used. And then I just start gently, gently rolling it so it stays nice and round. You know, this is also how you make wool dryer balls, but much, much bigger. If you haven't used those, you should start. They really are awesome for drying your clothes and keeping them soft without the chemical softeners. And I don't know if you can tell, it's getting a lot smaller already. I'm just being gentle so that I don't get any weird, irregular felting going on. And slowly as it gets smaller, I'm going to go to my sink and I'm going to get hot water on it and I'm going to start really compacting it down with soap until it gets to the size that I'm looking for. And here we are. Now we have a little nose to go with his hat. Next we'll work on the body and the beard. Very simple. So now we're going to work on the body of our gnome. You're going to use your hat as reference. We're going to be making a circle. We're going to draw a circle about the same width as this hat on the inside edge. Oh, this is a little thing to note. See that right there? See that little thin spot? That's because, remember when I was telling you about layering it nice and even and having no thin spots? Well, obviously I didn't follow my own instructions and I have a thin spot, very thin. I'll probably just stuff some green right there later so we don't see the padding through there. Anyhow, just a little note for you. So you're going to draw a circle as big as this over here on the edge. It doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be darn close. Maybe add a little bit extra for your seam allowance so that when you get done sewing it, it really does fit underneath of there. Then, I'm not big on accuracy, by the way. We're not measuring, we're not getting rulers out or anything. Take your circle and decide how tall you want him. I personally like him to be about the same as a circle, maybe a little bit more. So I'm probably going to go with this green line up here, which is about 1 inch bigger. And I'm just going to draw that straight across. The good thing about this fabric is these lines really help me cut straight. We don't know how long this is going to be until we cut out our circle. I'm going to cut on the outside edge, give myself a little bit extra seam allowance. I hope you're able to see this. This is my first YouTube tutorial. I really want to share these gnomes with you guys. Everything in focus? I hope so. Okay, so it's a very wonky circle. A little couple rough edges there. I'm not going to worry about it. Pick an edge, put a little line. That's for your reference. Now over here on this straight edge, put your little line about a ½ inch in from the edge you're going to cut. Here, I'll cut it off right now just so you can see that's where I'm at. That's going to be my seam allowance later. And since I don't have any real measurements, we're just going to wing it. And I'm just going to walk this circle as though I were sewing it all the way down this fabric. This is pretty approximate, but it works. There's my line again. Mark your line. And then you can cut a ½ inch on, or your seam allowance further, and then cut out your rectangle. there we have it. Cut off this edge, make it straight. Now I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew the bottom edge of this circle all the way around, leaving, I start sewing at that line on my circle. So there's a little piece of fabric sticking off over here. And I'm going to do that all the way to here, almost to my seam allowance, leaving it open so that once this is sewn in, I can take it off the machine, sew this seam, and then I will open it up and finish the circular part down here. If it's too big, I'll gather a piece of this. If it's too small or too big, whatever, I'll just kind of pinch it all together and do it. It'll be fine. I'll come back and show you that in a minute. Okay, I wanted to show you now that I've sewn in the bottom, but I left that little side open. This is what I was talking about. This is so you can adjust really your seam allowance. Now I'm going to shut it, line it up right there, and I'm going to sew up this side. Then I will fold it out, and I will sew it this way to finish up right here, to close that gap. Okay, it is sewn. Turn it inside out. Take off any straggly little strings that are hanging out on it. By the way, you should never yank a string to get it out. You should always trim it because you might be pulling a seam apart. Okay, I've made a cup. We have a felt cup. Take your rice. Where is my rice? And fill her up. And then we're going to refer back to the rest of the video that I made earlier to finish up this now. Here we are again. We have our inside out body. So the right side's on the outside. I have a 1/4 cup measure. I'm going to put some rice in the bottom of this guy. This gives him weight for sitting around and kind of like a bean bag. I don't know if I'm going to go halfway. Probably more like, maybe 1/3. It's about up to here, so maybe that's halfway. Then I'm going to use, this is cotton batting. You can use any batting. I happen to be an upholstery person by trade, so this is used in furniture and in some car applications, and I just happen to have lots of this stuff lying around, so that's what I use. I actually really like it. It gets nice and dense when you're packing it into little stuffed animals. It's just not that weird slippery polyester that I don't like. So anyways, fill this up pretty evenly, shove it in there. Till it's about that full. Now I'm just going to take a needle and thread and I'm going to sew this top shut, packing it in till what I have is this. Just going around it one more time to make sure it's secure and isn't going to bust open. And by the way, cats love gnomes like this. They love wool. They love it so much. They will destroy your little gnome so quick. So keep that in mind. Gnomes are catnip. Gnomes made out of wool are catnip. They love that stuff, so keep it safe from kitties. All right, so there it is. Next, we're going to work on our beard. I kind of just Find the back seam. Sometimes I forget to do this. Keep it in the back. I've accidentally made it on the side because I wasn't paying any attention. But just to make it professional, honestly, your seam should be in back. Find the front of your hat. Like this is probably going to be the back or a side because it's kind of leaning down. That's cute. Oh, and I really like how this twists around this way. So I think that this will be the front. This will be off to the side and the back. Just kind of decide how that's going to be. And then here is where his little face is going to be. I'm just imagining it all right now. Kind of place it on there, get an idea of where it's going to end up. Now you know that you're going to want to put a beard right here. This whole front part's going to be beard. And then we'll try the hat on a few times as we go. We'll put a little row of hair back here so it sticks out the bottom of his hat. I'm going to put the nose on later. I'm just placing it on here now for visual reference. See how high up I need to do it. Because sometimes you think, oh, the nose will be down here, but your hat won't fit over the top. So just put it all together so you can visualize it, and then you can begin making it. Grabbing the wool from my sheep. Okay, so this is what the sheep wool looks like that I cut off my sheep. It even still has some pieces of forest in it, grass and whatnot. So I'm just going to take a little piece of this. One just fell off. And this is a needle felting thing too. You're going to want to get a needle felting needle. Give me 1 second, I'll go grab one. If you don't have a needle felting needle, you can just use like white thread and a regular needle. This is my little tangled needle thing. White thread and needle to kind of sew these in. But needle felting is the best way to do this. And I'll show you what a needle felting needle looks like. This here is a 38 gauge star point. There's a whole bunch of different kinds. This is for fast felting. What it is it's a strange little needle that has a bunch of barbed edges down here, and when it pokes into your wool, it just kind of grabs little pieces of wool and just tangles them in, just like our wet felting earlier. Okay, so I'm just kind of going to put a little base layer in here. I'm not poking it all the way in. I'm just doing it here and there. I also have taken little pieces of his beard and I just twist them. You can get wool like this at yarn shops where spinners are. Online, Etsy is like, you know, addictive. Get on Etsy, you're going to spend $500 on wool if you want to make these gnomes because you won't be able to stop. That's what happens to me. Anyway, so we're just going to continue on doing that for a few minutes. Take a little piece of wool. Her hair is kind of short in some places because I don't know how to do that. I just cut it off with a pair of scissors. I adopted this lamb this summer. Her sister had been attacked by dogs, and the owners were moving to another state, so I got her, and she had this huge matted lump on the back of her. She's a hair sheep. They don't use... So I'm taking little bits, twisting them up, putting them on, using this to attach them. And when you're felting, it gets smaller every time, just like wet felting. As it tangles, it gets smaller, so it's going to keep reducing in. And I just keep doing that until I have a full and fluffy beard. Sometimes I take a piece and I twist both ends, and then I poke in the middle so that it kind of sticks out all funky. Cute. You're going to keep doing that, but I'm just going to show you really fast how adorable this is starting to look. Later, you'll be sewing his hat just slightly over his nose, over his beard. Oh my goodness, he's going to be a cutie. Okay, so I never did finish filming when I made this little guy over here. Never finished filming how we did the beard, sewed on this, sewed on this. So I have now switched. I have made another little gnome up to the same point. This time I decided we'll use some brown. He's a little bit younger. He's probably only 200 or 300 years old. I'm guessing he's 600. Oh, isn't it fun to have an imagination? All right, I'm going to continue adding beard with the needle felting needle. until we have a nice full beard, and then I will put hair around the outside edge. I'm also twisting it, giving it those little tufts. Don't stab yourself, these needles are quite painful. And you can pick up your little beard, fluff them up. You want it good and full. This stuff will get pushed down when you handle it. And, you know, you're going to have puff them up every once in a while. Put your nose on there, see how cute he's going to be. Oh, he's going to be cute. Continue shaping his beard until it's this shape and size that you desire. I'd like his to be a little smaller so we can see that amazing houndstooth fabric underneath. Imagine how thrilled some fellow was way back when he bought that green, luscious suit. Sexy. I'm just going to call it good. I can always add more or felt it down later after we sew in the nose and put the hat on. So one more time, I'm just going to kind of imagine where this hat is going to be, which direction I want it to be. I think I want it to be with the point pointing forward. His little nose is going to go right there. Adorable. Two supplies I forgot to tell you about, needle and thread, with thread to pretty much match like his nose and his hat. First things first, I'm going to sew on his nose. I'm just going to leave his nose right there, come in from underneath, and just tack it all the way around. Try not to let your stitches show, but wool is really forgiving. It usually hides it pretty good. Just getting right in there. Okay, once you've tacked that into place, tie off, and we will get his hat on him. Okay, we're going to sew on the hat now. Just start underneath the hat. You're going to have to watch out for his beard the whole time you do this. I try and keep that string over there. Make sure his hat is over his nose, and then just dig deep, get into the body fabric down below, and you can go large stitches between, because you can go around multiple times. Don't pull too tight, we don't want to gather it. Again, I have forgotten something here. I'm going to take a little bit of your cotton batting, excuse my reach, and stuff his hat. Stuff his hat. We need this hat to be puffy and stand up tall. So I'm going to stuff it. Remember, I had that thin spot right over here. Honestly, it doesn't look too bad, so I'll probably just leave it. If I think it looks bad when I'm all done, I can needle felt green right over the top of that area, and it'll just fill it in. Okay, so continue tacking it. Try and catch his nose in there. Don't let his beard get tangled up. You know how it is when you're sewing with your beard all in the way. Beard tangles going on. This is probably the hardest part right here, sewing the hat on with all that fluffy wool everywhere. And you're just going to continue around until his hat is thoroughly sewn on. I go around 2, sometimes 3 times. Make sure that's not showing. Try and get his hair out so it can show. Back here, You're going to want to pull that wool hair down and just sew his hat on. I'll show you when he's done. Okay, we got him all sewn together. It's looking pretty cute. He's missing some hair right here. Probably work on his hair over here a little bit. I'm going to take a little bit of water on my fingers, just a tiny bit of damp water, and I'm going to, you know, twist his beard a little bit here and there. Maybe twist his hairs on the side of his head to give him that crazy rumpled look. I'm going to use my needle felting needle, and I'm going to add some more brown into the thin spots. I sourced this locally from a lady who grows wool nearby, or sheep's, and so it also has some little debris. I think actually most roving does. Actually, when you get it from somebody who grew it at home, oftentimes there's little bits of grass and hay and whatever the sheep's rolled around in. No big deal, pick it out. I think it makes it even more cool that you get it, you know, straight from a sheep. Especially if you can source it locally or get it off your very own sheep. That's pretty cool too. So I'm just going to use my needle and poke it up under the brim of that hat. If I have too much, I'm just going to yank it right off. I'll pull little pieces off. But when you felt this with a needle felting needle, you can really reduce the size by just continuously stabbing at it. It's just tangling into the body of him. You can pull it back out if you want. Eventually it gets hard to adjust because it's so felted. It's a little bit like haggis. Haggard? Shoot, I don't know. The Harry Potter guy. Hello, little gnome. Adorable. See if you can see all their little hats. I hope you enjoyed this video.